All right, everybody. Now I'm back with the VIPs, and now we're doing our video interview with Mike Sand. And Mike, listen, I look at you and I crack up, and I'll tell you why, bro. You and I, I was looking at how old you are. We're about almost 10 years apart. Okay, bro. Listen. At the surface, you're a younger version than me. I mean, you really. Here's the difference between us. Like, you don't care what people say. Like, screw them. Bro, I'm a wuss when it comes to that. I get my feelings hurt. I get depressed and all that stuff. So I've got to learn that from you. But I swear, Mike, the thing I saw about you, 1998, is the same thing I'm seeing now. A guy who's cocky, a guy who's confident, and a guy who can back it up. And again, that's the problem with the wrestling business today. We're going to get into that. Whereas somebody like you should be embraced, you're shut out because, we got to protect our spot. We don't want that. Bro, why do you think you and I are sitting at our houses on a Sunday afternoon doing an interview, not working for anybody? And Mike, can you just give us a little bit of that light show you've been working on, please?
Oh, yeah. This is all about viral value. I got a little special something right here. Can you see that?
There you go.
There we go. Look at that, right?
Mike, Mike, just for the...
I got tattooed one right there.
Well, Mike, just for the record, anybody who's anybody is working SummerSlam today. You're working your own light show in your house, and I'm here with Rocky Balboa. That, right. and at the end of the day, you know what? That's all that really matters.
And here's the great thing: is every now and then, I'll see somebody in your kitchen. Go get some.
This is a big operation here in Colorado, Mike. I don't pull any punches. Now, listen, let's pick it up with the Natural Born Thrillers.
Okay.
I mean, Mike, you let's be honest. You can probably talk to a good percentage of younger wrestling fans today who won't even know these names. And I can sit here and tell you, when I read off every one of these freaking names, these guys were phenomenal. You could have built a wrestling company around these guys if you had half a freaking brain. And there were no politics in wrestling, which will never happen. But I mean, Mike, we're talking about you, Sean O'Hara, Mark Jindrak, Chuck Palumbo, Stasiak, Reno. Then we're talking about, Alan Funk, Kiwi, Elix Skipper. Bro, if TNA had that roster today of that young talent and there were no politics and no BS, that roster, in my opinion, there were no limits to what you guys were capable of doing if people would have just let you go.
Man, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, first of all, I think that, and I just had this conversation, this YouTube video. Somebody had posted it on my Twitter, and I retweeted it. There were things that 6'5" and 6'6" guys shouldn't have been able to do. I mean, these guys like Mark Jindrak and O'Hare flying out of the ring like they're a luchador. I mean, they're the most athletic people I've ever seen, and they were talented. They had charisma, and everybody. When the Natural Born Thrillers, everybody had their own niche. I mean, we weren't just all the same. I mean, Reno, Johnny the Bull, Jindrak, O'Hare, they fit. Palumbo, Stasiak, two unlikelies, they fit. And if you look at, let's look at it, Vince. If you look today, okay, are any of those guys wrestling for the WWE or TNA?
Mike, it's funny that you asked me that question, because while I'm sitting here talking to you and you're reeling off the list, I'm thinking of Jindrak and O'Hara managed by Mike Sanders. I'm looking at that package. Tell me who in the business today would present what that package could present.
There's nobody. Well, there's one guy, but he tends to have had that spot for, 10 or 15 years without letting anybody else into that spot. And we'll get into it. We're talking about Paul Heyman.
Okay, and we'll get into that. But Mike, I want to hear your point of view, because again, I worked with this group. I saw the talent in this group. Now, Mike, while you guys are getting the Vince Russo push, because I would have took a bullet for every one of you guys. You guys were the real deal. But
Right.
Mike, you got to give me the perspective from a wrestling point of view. Now you guys all come in at once. I mean, Mike, people don't know freaking O'Hare and Jindrak. These guys were freaking monsters, man. I mean, intimidating as freaking heck. Looked great. Now, Mike, being in the locker room with all these young guys in, tell me what that's like, what you're faced with, and how you're dealing with it.
Well, okay. So let's jump back to when you said you would walk past the locker room and you would see me holding court. What we did as the Natural Born Thrillers really got us a lot of heat, and especially it got me a lot of heat because, we didn't. I mean, there's not one of the guys that were the Natural Born Thrillers that traveled the road like a Benoit or a Malenko or they didn't travel the road. They didn't. I mean, we came from the power plant to the dance. And because of that, I really believe because of that was one of the big downfalls for us. And I know that sounds kind of weird, but you don't know the etiquette and all that stuff that you're supposed to do from spending those years on the road with, all the guys and the old school guys. You don't know all that.
Can I stop you for a second there? Mike, I don't curse ever. I mean, you and I, we're Christian people. We're going to get into that in a minute. That's absolutely bullshit. And let me tell you why, Mike. Mike, if I'm playing for any professional sport, if I'm playing for a Major League Baseball team or an NBA team or NHL or NFL, if all of a sudden, I'm playing for the San Francisco Giants, okay, there's this freaking kid that comes out of high school, okay, doesn't even play minor league ball, comes out of high school. This kid's a phenom. We're going to put him directly on the major league roster. This kid hits 30 homers, drives in 100 runs, steals 30 bases, and helps your team go from being an average team to making the playoffs in one season. Now, if you're a professional athlete, are you going to embrace this kid who took your team from being mediocre to the top, or are you going to sit there and criticize this kid for, oh, well, you didn't come up through the minor leagues and you didn't take the bus trips through Charleston? That's absolute bullshit, bro. Period.
But I know it is. But professional wrestling is not like any other professional sports. It is. I don't even know how to explain it. How I even think about professional wrestling, Vince. But it's true. And I think I don't really know what happened in WCW. I mean, we're getting pushed, but you got to. I mean, I wasn't hearing a bunch of stuff on the other end, so I don't know. I just know what was told to me and things that were said to me. But you also got. Okay. This is where a lot of heat begins for Mike Sanders and the Natural Born Thrillers. Okay? I'm talking to Jindrak in the locker room. Okay? You got Hacksaw Jim Duggan. You got all these, 30-year vets sitting there. And I'm like, Jindrak, I've heard the stories. I've heard the stories, man. Steamboat, Flair, Steamboat, Flair. And I'm like, dude, I know David Flair. He's horrible. And then guys would look at me or Jindrak. Okay, so we were wrestling before we got out there. We were wrestling in a place called Good Old Days. They were paying $100. Okay, listen, I would sit there and I'd say to Jindrak, I'd say, "Oh man, I remember when I used to have to get in my car." Sorry, they're sound activated. Like, man, I remember back in the day, when we broke in '98, when I would have to get in my car and I would have to drive 4.5 miles for $200. And these old school guys would just be like, "Oh, you remember I drove 300 miles for $20?" And it's like, but that's who we were, man.
Wait a minute, Mike. Hold on, bro. Wait. Bro, it's not that these guys didn't get the joke. I mean, come on, Mike. Anybody who knows you who didn't get the joke, I'm sorry, bro, but you got to have the IQ of a pigeon. There's a difference between not getting the joke, Mike, and not wanting to get the joke.
It's that mentality, Vince. I hate to say it, man. You know, and I'll tell you, we can get into it a little bit later too. I mean, our free reign, and I say the natural born thrillers being brought through in the WCW environment, and I'm not going to lie to you, was a lot of what killed me moving into the WWE environment. Period. You know, two different companies, man. And listen, I'm so thankful that you actually believed in us. I really am, because if it hadn't been for Vince Russo, there would not be Natural Born Thrillers. If it hadn't been for Vince Russo, there would not be a Mike Sanders. Because like I'd said on the earlier podcast, I had gotten fired. And you, unknowing to yourself, hired me back. And the next thing you know, 45-second promo on a Thunder with Norman Smiley. 2 weeks later, 6-minute promo on Monday Nitro. And I don't know if you remember that program. That was all about the $1 million guys. That was all about the top guys. And, you know, I remember after that getting and not tooting my own horn, I will now, but getting a flood of phone calls going, hey, man, you know, I was talking to this guy can talk, you know. But we got so much heat because we were just who we were.
Exactly. You know, Mike, I got to tell you a couple of things. First of all, the one thing that sucked about me for wrestling is I had to change my outer shell at times and be somebody that I wasn't just in order to survive. And you know what? I beat myself up for that to this day, because you know what? I never wanted to be like them. I wasn't like them. And the fact that at times I had to play the game makes me sick to my stomach. It just, bro, it cracks me up with you. And this is what I love about you. Whereas you by far are in the top 3% of the smartest individuals in the locker room. When you're sitting there telling Jindrak the story about back in the day and you driving for 4 miles, bro, you're bringing heat on yourself and you know it. And you know what, bro? That's who you are. And at the end of the day, if these people can't accept that, freaking screw them, Mike, because at the end of the day, they still wake up to this day and have to look at themselves in the mirror.
You know, I'll tell you the story, man. There was probably maybe one or two guys that pulled me aside in my WCW days, Goldberg being one of them. And I mean, I think we were in Australia. There was two incidents in Australia. And I was talking to Jindrak about how different it was when we broke in back in 98. And how, you know, back in 98, you went over everything in the back. And if you got out there and you forgot your spot, you were green. You know, because you know a lot of guys, the old school guys, would go out there and they go, "Oh, you work it out there and you call it in the ring." And I said, you know, if you call it in the ring, you know, if you don't know your spot when you get out there and we can't work the match off spots, you're green. And I remember I was in the locker room. I told Jindrak that story, and we were I was kind of joking about it. And Goldberg pulled me aside, and he's like, "You got to stop. You got to stop." And you know, in Goldberg's way, he was nicest can be. He's like, seriously, you're pissing a lot of these old school guys off. You got to stop. And I'm like, it was just us funning, man. You know, just.
Yeah, well, Mike, you were funning in the wrong place. But I mean, but here's the funny thing, bro. The person that got it, no doubt about it, was Kevin Nash. Can you talk to me about your relationship with Kevin?
Let me tell you, I mean, I have a lot of respect for Kevin, because, you know, he took the Natural Born Thrillers. He took he took guys under his wings. And, you know, I mean, Kevin's 80% business. He's all about business, but he often said, man, he's like, I'm not doing it unless it's fun. It's got to be fun. And honestly, that's kind of how I am with my life. Let me just tell you this story that wound up getting me a lot of heat. So Jindrak, and Nash were in Ohio working for Les Thatcher at a big open air, and then Nash had to leave, and then DDP was coming in. So I don't know if you know this story or not. So And we were once again drinking and wrestling. I actually, because I was dumb, took this finger over here. And so we're going back to the hotel at the Holiday Inn, and it's me, DDP, and it's Jindrak, and it's Palumbo, actually. It's Palumbo. And DDP stops us in the hallway. Now, this will just tell you how Kevin is. Stops us in the hallway, and he goes, all right, guys. He goes, we got to talk. I've got the next biggest catchphrase in professional wrestling. He goes, but if it leaves this hallway, you're done. You're dead. He goes, there's only one other person that knows it. It's Kimberly. He goes, and it's going to be bigger. It's going to be bigger than smell what the Rock's cooking. It's going to be bigger than Stone Cold said so. It's going to be the next big catchphrase. And he goes, all right, I'm going to go to the ring. And I'm going to look at my opponent. And I'm going to go, are you sure? Are you sure? Because if you're sure, then you're going to be SOL. And you know what that means. And we just stood there. So, no joke. We're like, okay. The next night, we have to go to Monday Nitro. And we get there, and we're like, Kev, man, I got to tell you the story. I got to tell you the story, man. And we tell him the story, and he goes, because that's when we did him on the chalkboard as Coach Nash. The Natural Born Thrillers were in the room. He's Coach Nash. He's in the chalkboard. Before he goes, you got no choice but to use it. I'm like, no. Dallas said we'd be dead because got no choice but to use it.
Oh my God.
Here we go. So we all made the decision, and he writes on the chalkboard, and he's like, all this, and O'Hare goes, I don't get it. And I go, what did you say? I don't get it. And Jindrak goes, what did you say? And then we're all like, you're going to be SOL. Now, fast forward. See, Dallas isn't even back. Dallas isn't there. He's on some hiatus because of his back, but he's coming back. Okay. And so the Natural Born Thrillers used to do this thing, Vince, where we would tell something and look at us. We'd all go, right? Right. Well, that night at the Holiday Inn, once Dallas says, SOL. He starts laughing. So we would always do the laugh. 3 or 4 months down the road, me and Chuck Palumbo's got to wrestle Dallas, and we're in the ring. And I knew it was coming. I just didn't know when it was coming. And I'm out there with Palumbo, and Dallas goes, all right, we got to talk about something. I'm like, here it comes. And Palumbo's sitting there. He goes, you basically effed me. He goes, I told you, I was there with you guys. I told you guys about the SOL, and he goes, you guys used it as heels. I was going to get it over as babyface. And I'm like, okay. And he goes, and so he's reaming us. He's reaming me and Chuck. And he goes, no joke. And he goes, and a lot of people don't get things that you Natural Born Thrillers do, like that stupid laugh. Nobody gets it that you're doing. No, he goes, nobody gets that you're doing Paul Orndorff. Palumbo fell out of the ring. I left. I love Dallas, man. I love DDP. He's been an advocate of and listen, and looking back, that was wrong, because, he did tell us that, and Dallas is a good person. I mean, he's done a lot of good for a lot of people. And I got but at the time, in the moment, not knowing what I know now, you think you're doing, because I didn't wear a mask. That's me. I'm hanging out with Nash, and we're doing this, and we're having fun, not knowing what I know now.
Well, Mike, listen, I love Dallas too, and I've said it a million times, man. I wish I could personally, just the stuff he did with Hall and Jake. The guy should be sainted, and I've said that a million times before. But Mike, what we're talking about here is how wrestlers and the business itself takes itself so so seriously, bro, to the point of nauseum. That's what we're talking about here, bro. The people involved, the people in power positions, everything is so freaking serious that when you have somebody that comes along that is themselves and that is funny and entertaining and not afraid to be themselves, well, that's how you draw heat on yourself. The reason why Kevin Nash never had heat with himself, let's face it, you and Kevin were identical in personalities. Nobody's going to mess with Kevin Nash because of the way he looks. And this is what I love about Kevin, okay? Like you, Mike, Kevin was never into it. Didn't matter who you brought in. I never witnessed Kevin Nash once ever trying to keep anybody else down. At the end of the day, Kevin wanted to make sure he made more money than them. Because to Kevin, that's what it was all about. But, bro, you could have brought in somebody twice the size of Kevin, and Kevin would have never played a political game to try to keep that guy at bay.
He was never, I don't think Kevin's ever, to me, you just knowing him and he's never been worried about his spot because he knows how to hold on to his spot and he wants to have fun. I don't think Kevin's ever been worried about his spot. He's made a lot of money, and he's 6'10", 11, and he's got charisma, and he's Kevin Nash, so he's not worried. I mean, he tried to help, like he was somebody much like yourself that wasn't worried about any of those natural-born thrillers taking his spot. He wanted to see these guys because a lot of those guys enjoyed the same kind of camaraderie and the same kind of goofiness that Nash brought to the table, and he could dish it out and give it back, but the problem with WC, like I said, Goldberg's the only guy that ever really came to me and was like, you got to stop. And the only other person was Sting, but Sting had a long talk with me about something else that I've never really gotten until later on in life, until I stepped on a comedy stage, and then it hit me what Sting used to say to me, or what he pulled me aside. No, I'll tell you, we can get into it later, but Sting pulled me aside in Australia, and no joke, it was right before the Hoovie incident. I mean, literally an hour before Hoovie. I was having breakfast with Sting, and Sting said, "I don't think you realize what you have." He said, "You have a talent that guys work their whole life, 20, 30 years to have. The ability to walk out there with a microphone and hear a pin drop, and it doesn't bother you. It's microphone skills. It's being able to walk out there. I don't care whether it's 8 people and a blind dog in Rossville, Georgia, or 30,000 people on a Monday Nitro." And I never really got it until I got on a comedy stage. And I don't have fear. Put a mic in my hand. Let me get out there. Let me just do it.
Well, Mike, let me ask you this, because and I think I know the answer to this, but I just want to make sure. When Goldberg comes to you and says, bro, you got to stop, At any time, Mike, do you tell yourself you've got to stop?
You know what? I wish Goldberg had came to me threatening, like grabbed me and shoved me up against the wall and said, "Look here, you little ass, you got to, stop." But he was just Goldberg was just being nice, man. He was just like, "Look, man, you got to stop." And I was like, "Okay." Now, I will tell you, the Harris brothers jokingly did something to me one time, but they were joking, where they did put me up against a wall. And we were up we were at the Cow Palace before we went to Australia. And the only reason I knew it was a rib, because they grabbed me and they put me up against the wall, and my sunglasses started to fall off. And I think it was like, Don was like, "Oh, no, don't break those." And I'm like, okay, they can't be serious because they would break these glasses.
Right.
So, but you're right. We never, Jindrak, O'Hare, all of us never wore a mask. That's who, and sorry, that's who you got, man. I mean, you got the above average Mike Sanders, and that's just who I've always been. So.
Mike, you talk about the Cow Palace. You talk about that show. And I don't know if you remember this. You probably do, because wrestlers remember everything, okay?
There.
The Cow Palace was my last show.
You there? I hear you.
Yeah.
There?
Can you hear me?
Okay. I can hear you now. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, the Cow Palace. You're talking about that show.
Right.
That show is very memorable to me, and I'll tell you why. Okay. The Cow Palace was my last show at WCW, both on camera and working as a writer. After that show, I knew going into that show, I was bailing out after it. I knew it. Okay. I remember specifically, Mike, and I don't even know if you do, my last act on television in WCW was giving you the keys to the office and telling you, Mike, I got to go somewhere to take care of business. Here, you're in charge. And Mike, I did that for a reason. And the reason why I did that was like, I was saying, listen, whether you guys, not you, management, whoever, think I'm an a-hole, think I'm out of my mind, think I don't know what I'm doing, whatever's going through your feeble minds at this point, this is the guy.
Right.
He is the guy. I am giving him the keys to the castle. I am anointing him the guy. If you guys want to drop the ball after that, and bring in the dog, on a collar and walk him to the ring, then bring the dog to the ring. This is the guy. And then, Mike, like I'm even reading from there, like I forgot a lot of this stuff. Then, bro, you go into an angle over the commissionership with Ernest Miller, and yeah, you and the cat, and now, Mike, I'm reading this today, and I'm saying to myself, who are two better talkers than I ever worked with in my life? Bro, look at today's product. Mike Sanders and Ernest Miller in the ring tomorrow. Who is better than that? But yet, here are the two guys. Mike's doing his thing in Atlanta. Bro, I still keep in touch with Ernest. Ernest is doing his thing in freaking Atlanta. It's like, and guys are on TV that have been on TV for over a decade and freaking suck, Mike. I mean, you and Ernest Miller, by far, bro, the two best talkers I spoke to. And you know what, bro? I worked a lot with Sting in TNA. Bro, Sting always struggled with in-rings and promos. And bro, he was a little intimidated of that. That's why he pulled you aside and said that to you. And Mike, here's the thing that sucks. When you have people in the business that don't see that and don't embrace it, and because you're so good, they're trying to keep you at bay, you're killing the freaking business.
I agree. But, Vince, I'll tell you, I agree with you 100%. And I will tell you this. Going to work with Ernest Miller totally brought my game to a whole new level. I mean, I couldn't have asked to be put with a better guy when it came to talking on the mic, because I know that if I didn't bring my game, he would eat me up. And him and I look back on some of the stuff that, he was the one that helped me. I think he even helped me with, come up with $2 cheese whiz sucking trailer trash. I mean, he helped me come up with some of the stuff. But working with him, man, and going out there and knowing, and I'm not gonna lie, like, I wasn't ever really nervous. I wasn't even nervous when I went out there, and which got me a lot of heat. I'll tell you about that when I actually called Ric Flair old, but I didn't call him old, and I'll tell you about that later. But working with Ernest, man, was like the best thing that could have happened to me. And then doing the commissionership, the 3-round kickboxing match was a little corny at the MGM for Halloween Havoc. But because, it was never built up, because I took karate and martial arts and all that good stuff, but I wasn't like Eric Bischoff and him and all that. So it didn't really make a whole hell of a lot of sense. But, they put the commissionership on me, and I was like, still just being me, man, not really realizing what I had. Do you know when that happened? Do you know that Johnny Ace came to me after that? Now, and basically told me that I should think about, when everything started happening to me. I don't remember when Johnny Ace actually came in. I think it was after Australia for that brief period. But Johnny Ace came to me and said, you might want to think about asking for more money. You might want to think about, getting yourself an agent of some sort, because you're getting into a spot and into a position. But you know what? You know what I thought? I'm just kind of happy to have a job and be doing what I'm doing. That was my mentality. I was like, Vince, I think I was making, even at that time, I was only making $75,000 a year. maybe as a base. I mean, I was just happy, man. I think most of the Natural Born Thrillers were just happy to have a spot. We're on Monday Nitro, man. You know, and now I will tell you something else Sting told me. I just forgot about this. At that same dinner, which this is something that never registered, he said, do you realize that you're on 8 out of 11 of the segments of the show most of the time? I'm like, yeah, man. He goes, you can't pay for that kind of advertising. It never registered with me. I was just happy. Believe it or not, as much of a clown as I was really happy to have a job and to be in freaking Monday Nitro, man. You know? So,
Yeah,
but working with Ernest.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, it's because that's because you guys didn't know any better. You know what I'm saying? You were young, you were in the spot, you were doing what you love to do, and the BS that was going on around you, you were oblivious to, as was I. Same exact thing, Mike. I was happy to be there. I was happy to be working with you guys. It's what I love to do. I knew what was going on around me, but I didn't care. I wasn't going to get caught up in that stuff. Here's a funny story too, bro. And I'm thinking today, and we're going to get into this in a minute. We're going to wind up WCW in a minute. Like, I'm thinking today, like, Jeff Jarrett hated Mike Sanders. You know, bro, I kept trying to think. I was walking this morning and I'm trying to think of what, bro, aside from when you look at you guys side to side, bro, same size, same body likeness, there's a lot of comparisons there, but I'm thinking about it more and more today, and I start remembering, Mike, do you remember, bro, that time we worked on an airplane? And I think you had dyed your hair blonde, and we were talking about like you doing a parody of Double J. And bro, do you remember when we walked past him and he was sitting down? I said, Jeff, you got to see this. And bro, you cut like a 10-second promo. Bro, the look on his face, I'll never forget. Bro, that had to be where it started.
That might have been where it started. Vince, do you want to know the truth of why Jeff Jarrett? I mean, we're not playing any punches here. Do you really want to know the truth?
Absolutely, I do.
Okay. Yeah, probably my arrogance had something to do with it. But I think my second wife had a lot to do with it. And you probably, I don't know if I ever talked to you about this. I was married to Mandy. Mandy, her family, they've been around the business forever. She was really good friends with Owen, good friends with Jeff. You were not holding anything back. I mean, I'll just tell you, she would, fly to places with his fix and with their fix or whatever. Listen, she's a great girl. I mean, I married her. And I remember Jeff Jarrett, when her and I started hanging out and going out and whatever, I remember him telling her when they would see each other, it's never going to work out with him. And they were good friends. Like she knew them from Owen Hart days and all of them. Like her and Jeff were inseparable as far as their friendship and everything. And when I started going out with her and stuff like that, and coming to TNA, I'm telling you that in my mind, that had a lot to do with it because she was like a little sister to him. She really was. And to tell the truth, that's why.
I'm guessing not, but you never had that conversation with him, I take it.
I went in and apologized to Jeff for something I did with the tag team. What's their name? America's Most Wanted. And he told you he didn't believe my apologies. So I was in a losing, I was in a losing end. But years later, you know what? Like after her and I got married and I was doing comedy down at the Orlando Improv, Jeff brought like all the TNA people there and was as nice as could be to me. And I wasn't in wrestling anymore. And he was like, hey, man. And ever since I've seen him then, after I got out of wrestling, and maybe it was because he was a big reason that Mike Sanders was no longer wrestling. I'm not in TNA. I'm not going anywhere else. I'm not coming back to TNA. I think we know that. But maybe once that was out, and I think, to be quite honest, man, I think and some of it, let's face it, when you come to a guy at TNA that goes out there and the heel section is cheering for him, and the heel section is all about Mike Sanders, and you say to this guy, a heel shouldn't have people cheering for him. There's something wrong with that mentality of this guy just doesn't want you to get over.
Mm-hmm.
And I do remember my hair. Man, I used to get out at Monday when I was doing R&B security and all that. When my hair was like that, people would be like, "Double J, Double J." I'm like, "Oh no, it's just Mike Sanders."
Hey, Mike, let's wrap up WCW because, I mean, there's a lot to cover. But, now, bro, I go home. Now, sold to the WWE. I know you were one of the selected, few that actually the contract transferred over to WWE. Bring me during that time period. What's going through your mind when WCW is out of business and now knowing, okay, the WWE has taken over my contract?
I remember being on the plane with Chris Canyon at the time, and Chris asking me, what do you think? 'Cause I hadn't gotten picked up yet, and he's like, "What do you think?" And I was like, "I don't know. I just go back to driving a tow truck for my father." I mean, listen, Vince, I spent 4 years in the United States Army. I drove tow trucks for my father. Just because professional wrestling isn't there for me, or the fame and the fortune or whatever, I can function, and I think that's one thing you used to say is that. When wrestling's not there, I mean, there's a lot of guys, let's face it, that's all they've ever known. And when it's not there, most of those guys are dead because they can't function in real life. I mean, fortunately for me. So, I mean, I get back. I forget who I get a call from. Maybe it's Johnny Ace. And said, we're going to renew your contract. We're going to give you a 3-year deal. This is where it started. You have a 3-year deal. We need you to go down to the Ritz-Carlton and need you to meet with JR. I was like, okay. And I think Jimmy Yang was there and maybe Shane Helms. And this is where I knew this is going to be a tough road. So I go in to meet with JR. Okay. Sorry, I hit sound action. I go to meet with JR and I sit down with JR. And, once again, when I tell you the story, this has nothing to do with the way I feel about anybody. Okay. Because I still have a lot of love for Kevin Nash. I sit down with JR, and it's not even a hi, a hello. JR looks at me, and we sat there, and he said, "Mike, we know that you're Kevin Nash's drinking buddy. You're in the WWE now. I'm going to wipe that slate clean." That's what he said to me. And I knew right then that I was just destined to struggle because when you open a conversation like that, and we're gonna wipe your slate clean, and you're starting in the WWE, and then he went on to talk about possibly doing some announcing stuff and being an announcer. But I remember sitting there going, man, I'm screwed. Not even a hi, a hello, but we're gonna wipe your slate clean.
So now, Mike, they wind up sending you to immediately to Heartland Wrestling Federation. Is that true?
Not immediately. Let me tell you what happened. I started getting phone calls from Alan Funk and everybody going, "Hey, you get a phone call yet?" And I'm like, "No, we're moving to Cincinnati." I'm like, "Wow, that sucks." I was like, "Wow, man, dude, whoa." He goes, "Yeah," and everybody's calling me. I'm like, "Man, I haven't got a phone call." And I'm not gonna lie, probably 2 months went by, and I didn't get a phone call. And everybody else was already living up in Cincinnati. And I said, being an idiot, I go, maybe I should call Johnny A, see what's going on. I called Johnny Ace. I'm like, "Hey, Johnny, what's up?" He's like, "Hey, Mike." I said, "What are you up to?" I was like, "I'm just in." I said, "Yeah, what's going on?" I said, "A lot of people moved up to Cincinnati." He goes, "Oh yeah, I need you up there by next week." I'm like, "Really?" And then Jindrak got the call. So me and Jindrak move up to Cincinnati to Les Thatcher School, HWA. And it was right when 9/11 happened, I think, right around September. So we go up to Heartland Wrestling, and then we're going and doing our TV on Sundays with Jim Cornette. And we're just, we're up there, and then, 6 months evaluation comes around, so my ex-wife, I got to tell you the story. My ex-wife used to have a ton of T-shirts, Rock and Roll Express, Midnight Express, Dynamic Dudes, okay? She had an extra small Dynamic Dude shirt, okay? I remember on the 6-month evaluation, Johnny Ace was coming in with, I think, Pritchard and all those guys. I show up at the training school, the wrestling trunks, skin tight Dynamic Dude shirt. Okay. Johnny's an executive by then. Like he's not finding that funny one bit. Although Dr. Tom Pritchard popped huge, like huge. He's like, man, I can't believe you did that. And that was so. After that 6 months, Johnny cut a bunch of people. I think Alan Funk got cut, and a few. And I was still safe. I don't know why I didn't get cut then. And then I was there for I was there for 6 more months, and I think it was always 6 more months. And then that's when and I was writing TV. Was writing TV for Heartland. I was writing the show.
Yeah. Tell me how that came about, Mike. How did you transition into that?
Oddly enough, Raven, like WWE would periodically send guys that were either coming out of rehab for injuries or drugs to Heartland to train. Like and I have a great story I got to tell you, man. It's great. But Raven was up there, and then Raven was writing the TV for Les, and I was just helping Raven. And Raven got ready to leave, and he said, hey, man, I'm turning this TV over to you. You know how it's done. You see how it's written. You see how the segments go, the times. And I'm like, yeah. And I would write it, and I would sit with Les and a few other people, and Les was like, yeah, I like it. Let's do it. And I'm telling you, Vince, like, I mean, I did a show, and even Cornette, your buddy, was even impressed with, because I was writing alongside Cornette, too, because we would do our shows. We would go do our shows down in Cornette's area down there. What is it? Where WWE Developmental was.
Louisville?
Louisville, yeah. We'd go do our shows on Sunday there. I mean, I was writing stuff with guys falling off the top of trucks, and I'd love to get the footage. And but the one thing Cornette taught me was, and I learned the hard way, was when TV's done and you still got 2 minutes to go and the match is done. Like I remember the first time I wrote TV, and we did it down there, and Cornette didn't say anything to me, neither did Danny Davis, and Cornette said, "So what are you going to do after the show?" Like I said, "No, it's 1, 2, 3 match is over." And sure enough, 1, 2, 3 match was over, and there's 2 minutes of TV left. And Cornette looks at me, he goes, "You got 2 minutes." I go, yeah. He goes, "You don't get it." Again, no. He goes, "So and so hit the ring, boom. So and so hit the ring, boom." He goes, "You've got to have something to finish out this show. With these guys, your time goes short," which I learned. I'm like, okay, I know that. So then I was writing TV, and then, I got, you and I talked about this, I got the writer's packet from Stephanie McMahon's office for Thunder. And I remember this all happened so quickly. I get a writer's packet one day. The next day, I call Big Man to tell him, "Man, I just got a writer's packet in the mail from Stephanie McMahon's office." And I remember him saying, "Throw it away. Vince is back. You're about to get called up." Wow. Sure enough, next day, Johnny Ace calls me. He's like, "Hey, man, we need to see you at King of the Ring. We got a spot for you." That's, but before I jump into any further, let me tell you one of my most memorable moments at Heartland. We had Val Venus there. We had Steve Blackman there and Eddie Guerrero there. Eddie Guerrero just come off his injuries, rehab, whatever, and he's training. So Eddie Guerrero is in the ring with all these young students, and he's doing these forward rolls, and all the students are following him doing these forward rolls. And he stands them all up, and he's got their attention, man. They're hanging on every word he's talking about, passion and all this, and how important the simplest moves are, like these forward rolls. They're so important. He said, "I'll give you an example. I was in my Camaro, went off the road, it flipped, and it threw me out of my T-tops, and instinctively, I tucked my head, and I rolled. Saved my life." Steve Blackman goes, "So what you're really saying to these kids are, if you'd have had your damn seatbelt on, there'd be no need for these forward rolls." And I remember Val Venus was just like, "That's wrong, man. That's wrong." So I get the call, and Nash tells me, "Vince is back. That's you. And you're getting called up." Johnny Ace calls me. So I take the writer's packet, throw it in the trash. I can write in 13 years, right? 10 years, 12 years, 20 years, I can write. And I get a call at the King of the Ring. Now, here's the deal. Like, this is my first real experience being in the W. I mean, I went to WrestleMania when we got bought out, but, you know, I was just in and out, watched the show and all that. But this is my first real experience of getting called up. And, you know, nobody in WWE, maybe it's because they're fearful of their spot at the time, whatever, pulls you aside and says, hey, man, this is how you kind of need to act. Like, when I got there, I'm in a Hawaiian flowery shirt, khaki shorts, and flip-flops. Meanwhile, everybody else has kind of got nice shirts on and, you know, slacks, and dress shoes, and I'm like, My toenails are actually painted because my daughter was so young she wanted to paint my toes. I let her paint my toes. And I'm like, I didn't register. So, you know, I'm there in the WWE, and I remember a couple of things, man, had happened. Let me back up to a couple of things, Vince. I don't know the timeline, okay? So, the timeline is the year that I was in Heartland, I had to go to Atlanta for something, for Monday Night Raw or something. And this is exactly what happened, my friend. Okay, Cleveland, I'm at King of the Ring. I walk in, I see Shawn Michaels, introduce myself. He's like, man, I know who you are. Shawn Michaels comes up, Nash walks up, Vince McMahon walks up, Hogan walks up and says, Vince, we need to talk. I hear Russo's back. He's like, walk and talk. They start walking. Nash is like, walk and talk. So I'm walking with them. You got McMahon, Nash, HBK, Hogan, and the above average Mike Sanders trailing behind. We get out to catering. There's nobody in there. And we get into catering. Hey, make me a sandwich. So we get into catering, and I go to hand Vince a cup. Like, hey, here's a cup for your coffee. And he shuns me away. He's like, thanks, kid. And I turn around, and Hogan hands him a cup. It's got coffee in it. He takes it. I knew I made a mistake right there. So at I think it's King of the Ring, I'm just doing my thing, man. And I was brought there because the spot that I was supposed to have was like Paul Heyman's spot. Paul Heyman was the pitch guy for Lesnar. I was going to be the pitch guy for like Johnny the Bull, the Natural Born Thrillers, these guys. Maybe kind of go head to head with Heyman, you know? And during this transition, I'm sitting on a couch between Kevin Nash and Shawn Michaels. Sitting there, and Kevin Nash gets in an argument with Heyman. He's producing an RVD vignette, and he gets an argument about screwing guys out of money. It's a big thing ensues, and the whole time he's arguing with Nash, he's looking at me. And I remember thinking to myself as I'm sitting there, man, I probably shouldn't be sitting here. This is not a good spot for Mike Sanders. So I get up, I go do my vignette, I go back to catering, I'm sitting down and I'm eating catering, right? Keep this in mind. Vince, I go to get up like this. Chris Jericho sat down behind me. I didn't see Chris Jericho. So about 45 minutes later, Raven finds me. He goes, dude, what's your deal? Like, what do you mean? He goes, you dissed Jericho. I go, I haven't even seen Jericho. He goes, no, dude, he sat down next to you at catering and you just got up, didn't shake his hand. I go, I said, I haven't seen Jericho. So I spend the day, I find Jericho and I go, Chris, I want to apologize. I didn't see you sit down, man. I'm sorry. And he's like, you need to shake everybody's hand. You need to make, I'm like, hey, ass, I didn't see you. I'm apologizing, So keep that in mind. King of the Ring happens. I go back to Cincinnati. And then I'm in Atlanta. I don't know why I'm in Atlanta, but I'm in Atlanta at Monday Night Raw. And I say, I'm shaking everybody's hand. Hey, I love the way you put the tape down. Hey, like the way you screwed that light bulb in. Hey, I'm shaking everybody's hand, Vince, like crazy. And I walk into catering and I see Triple H sitting next to Vince McMahon. And this is when he tore his quad and was on crutches. And I was watching the TV and I said, when he's done talking to Vince, I'm going to go shake his hand. Because they were in a big conversation. Okay? So I'm sitting there, I'm watching him, look at Triple H, I'm looking at TV, look at Triple H, and then I take my eyes off for him a second. No joke. He's standing next to me on his crutches, walked all the way across catering. It's like, hey, I'm Triple H. How you doing, Mike? And I remember thinking, bro, that guy had to just walk all the way across catering on his crutches to shake my hand. So I shook his hand. Forget about it. 3 months later, I get a call. They want me to go to Connecticut to do kind of an audition for broadcasting, like a broadcast team, like JR. I'm in the limo. We're waiting on one more guy to get in. Now, all I did was shake Triple H's hand, left Monday Night Raw. I'm sitting in the limo. The limo driver's like, we're waiting on one other person. I'm like, who are we waiting on? He's like, Raven. I'm like, oh, okay. Raven gets in the limo. He looks at me. This is 3 months later. Raven gets in her limo and looks at me and goes, bro, you got major heat with Triple H. I go, what? For what? He goes, for what you had. Well, you had to walk over and shake your hand in catering. I go, because that went through the locker room. On that Monday Night Raw, that went through the locker room that Mike Sanders disrespected Triple H. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? So I called Kevin. I'm like, hey, man, can you just see if I got heat with Triple H? He's like, yeah. And he said no. He said I didn't have heat, which is, BS. So, and then shortly after
you know what's amazing, Mike?
That I get a phone call from Dr. Tom Pritchard.
Hey, Mike, can you hear me? Let me. Can you hear me, Mike? Yeah. Let me jump in here for a second.
Yeah.
You know what's amazing to like the VIPs, listening to this show now and having to get the privilege to listen to you. The fact that they're getting to see firsthand how utterly ridiculous and trivial all this stuff is, and the things as far as not saying hello and you having to worry about your career. Mike, do you think for 1 second in the spot I was in all three companies, do you think I even thought for a minute who came up to me and said hello and who didn't? If a new guy, Mike, was coming into, TNA and he was 23 years old, you know what, Mike? If I came across him first, I would say hello to him first without even thinking twice about it. It meant absolutely nothing. And the fact that these trivial things can have an impact on somebody's career who is as talented. But you know what it is, Mike? Here's what it is. Let's get to the underlining of what it is. They see somebody as talented as you come along. Okay, now you are a threat to the spot. So guess what? Now we're going to find the littlest thing to have heat with Mike Sanders over. And, guess what? Mike Sanders didn't say hello to me today. Mike, you describing the story, it's like, it's almost like you think you're talking about children here. When no, Mike didn't see you, Mike didn't say hello. Do you really give a crap? Or is that the one feeble excuse you're going to pin against Mike Sanders? I mean, because at the end of the day, that's what's happening here. Mike, listen, let me say this, and I hate to go off on a ramp. Listen, I love Triple H. I love Chris Jericho. I've got nothing against the Paul Heymans of the world. But, bro, people that have been in their spots for a long time, there's a reason why they're in those spots. There is a reason. They know exactly how to play the game like a chessboard. Because you know what, Mike? If it were all based on talent, if Triple H is in the spot he is because of talent, and I'm a Triple H fan, if Jericho is in the spot, then why aren't you in the spot? Then why isn't Ernest Miller in the spot? It's got nothing to do with that. The ones that have longevity know how to play the game. You knew how to play the game. You just chose not to, and I applaud that. Yeah. You can go now, Mike.
And I agree with you, Vince. I don't wear a mask, and but that wasn't the only thing too. And like you and I talked about this, and I'm going to shed a little light on this. I'd gotten a call.
That was the cue. When you said I'm going to shed a little light on this, that was the cue for your background. You totally blew it, bro.
You like that I went ahead and went a little pyro and ballyhoo on you.
Okay, now shed a little light on it. Go ahead.
I'm going to just. Here's the deal. Whether he ever wants to admit it or not, I really don't care. The time that I got released from the WWE, I got a call from Dr. Tom Pritchard, telling me that I was about to get a call. And I remembered. I was back in Atlanta, and I was actually sitting in my father's tow truck. We were having a conversation. I was selling my house up in Kennesaw, and he was helping me do some stuff. And the phone rings, and it's Dr. Tom Pritchard. And he said, "Hey, I'm going to let you know," because I have a lot of respect for Dr. Tom. He's got his demons and his vices, but he's always straight up and honest with me. He said, "You're about to get a phone call." He said, "And Johnny Ace is going to call you. Johnny Ace is going to tell you that Creative doesn't have anything for you, and they're going to give you a release." He said, "But I'm going to tell you right now. My good friend Michael Hayes was in the meeting, and you're getting released." And this is what he said, true or not, is your association with Kevin Nash. And what he meant by that is that Paul Heyman made it pretty clear that Mike Sanders, and I go back to me sitting in that spot between HBK and Kevin. He said, Mike Sanders is not a $1 million guy. So why is he just hanging out, something like that, with $1 million guys? And Paul Heyman had a lot of power at the time, and it's taken me a really long time. I think about this periodically, but you're getting released because of your association with Kevin. That's not but he's my friend or anything like that, but because Kevin would say, "Hey, go grab your bag, come in my locker room," or blah 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 blah. Like we did in WCW. And Paul Heyman was the one that put the kibosh on it. Now, sure enough, no joke, man. It was either a day later or 2 hours later. Johnny Ace calls me and says, "Hey, Mike, Johnny Ace. I need to meet with you up in Cincinnati, man. Creative doesn't have anything for you, and we're going to let you go." Now, this was kind of the interesting thing about this whole situation, Vince. The only positive thing that came out of this. So I met with Johnny Ace, and I sat at the table and said, "Hey, man, shoot straight with me. Did Paul Heyman not like me? I mean, what's the deal?" Because that story I heard is that I'm getting released because of my association with Kevin Nash. He goes, no, it's because Creative doesn't have anything for you. I'm like, "Johnny, bullshit. Come on, man." So him and I go back and forth. Now, I was on a 3-year contract with them, right? 3 years. And my second year had started like July 19th. This was July 25th when they let me go, okay? I don't know if you know where I'm going with this, because I had 90 days out. So I actually got paid. And I brought this up. I was sitting with Johnny Ace, and I said, okay. So I had to sign the release or whatever. And before I got ready to leave, he said, Johnny Ace said, now looking back, he goes, "Why didn't you ever send that writer's packet back to Stephanie McMahon's office?" And he said, it was kind of a slap in the face. Probably was. But I look back and I think, it was, Paul Heyman, for whatever reason. Let's face it, Vince. Let's face one thing right now. In the past 10 years, aside from Triple H, Stephanie McMahon, Vince McMahon, who has Paul Heyman really went head to head with on the microphone? Yeah. Really? Well,
yeah, I mean, like I said, Mike, there's this whole underbelly of professional wrestling that, the fans don't know about, they're not privy to. It's the reason I'm not in the business anymore. It's the reason you're not in the business anymore. And Mike, I've always said it, bro, it is tough to be a nice guy and exist in the wrestling business because, bro, you gotta be part prick. There's no question about it. I mean, Mike, I look at guys like you. A perfect example to me is you mentioned him earlier in the interview. A guy like Dale Torborg,
right.
A physical bro, Matt Morgan.
Right.
I mean, are you freaking kidding me? But bro, you can't be a good guy, an honest guy, not a backstabber, not play the games, not play the high school, role playing and exist in the wrestling business. And guys that have been there for a long time are there for a reason. It's real simple.
And this is the one thing too, Vince. And just transitioning with the the me getting fired. Anyway, so FYI, when I left that office that day, I was going to tell you, I'll go into something else. When I left that office that day, I said to Johnny A, so does this mean I'm going to get paid 90 days out on my second year? And they paid me 90 days out on my second year, which was a little bit more money. But, you know, in this is what I've never understood. In WCW, I have to admit, like with the Cat and with Ric Flair, you know, these were guys that were willing to, when it comes to microphone skills and managing and things like that, you know, like they always say, if you want to be a good wrestler, you want to be made. A top guy has to make you. Like Razor Ramon laid down for Kid. You know, you've got to have somebody. You've got to have a mentor. But I don't. When it comes to Paul Heyman, who has he ever mentored to take over his spot? Who has he ever? You know, I mean, you got to be. In my opinion, I said this all the time. When it comes to that business, you've got to be willing to sell your soul to the devil, and I just can't do that.
Yeah, and totally understandable, Mike. Mike, let's move on to TNA. Jeff's starting up this new company. You know, I become a part of it. You know, of course, and listen, first of all, you're one of you're probably the best storyteller that I know. Can you now publicly in this forum as an exclusive to the Swerve, can you let the cat out of the bag with the Atlanta to Nashville trips?
Well, here's the great thing, and you know, and it came out later, but a lot of people don't know this. So we had a lot of times we'd have Raven, Eric Watts, you, and Disco, I think, right?
I think Disco. I think Perry was in a few of those.
Right. So, yeah. And then for some odd reason, I was the guy that got deemed to get the rental van. And
bro, listen, are you really going to trust Perry Saturn to get the rental van?
Well, I mean, I was like, Sanders has got to get the rental van, and I remember, man, and it wasn't until I don't know that it ever came out. So my mom had this green Dodge Caravan. It looked like a rental van, you know, and I would literally, and you knew about it. You knew about we were using my mom's Caravan, but none of the other guys, they thought I was just renting a van, and they were paying me for van rental. And I remember a few times, like I believe Raven even saying, this van looks a little used. Somebody left their toys in the back. And I'm like, somebody never really got it. It was my mom's van. I'm like, come on, man. But those were, I will tell you, Vince, I learned a lot on my way up to Nashville. I learned a lot from you. I learned a lot. But it was, I don't know if you remember this, man. Okay, so I'll tell you, like when I was doing TNA, I was getting paid, you know, $500 a night. That's what I got paid. And I don't know if you remember this, but like you called me and you said, all right, you know, your contract's up with WWE. We're going to bring you to TNA. And I was like, okay. He said, Bob Ryder's going to call you. And I was like, okay. And sorry, I hit that. He goes, Bob Ryder's going to call you and tell you we were working into the program. I was like, okay. So Bob Ryder, and I said, well, you go, don't take anything less than 500 because that's what everybody else is getting. Or, you know, guys of your position are getting 500. And I was like, oh, okay. So Bob calls me up. He's like, hey, man, Vince wrote you to the show and all this. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool, man. And he goes, we'll see you up here on Wednesday. And I'm like, okay. Bob, I said, but Bob, what's the pay scale going to be? Said, well, you know, for the new guys, we like to bring them in at around 200. I was like, oh. And I said, sorry, I can't come up for that. You know, I'll do it for 500. And I remember Bob going, you know, let me check the budget. And I'm thinking he like puts the phone down. He's like, really, 500? He comes back and he goes, okay, Mike, look, nobody else is getting this, so we're going to bring you up at 500. And I think you told me later on in the van ride that pissed Jeff off. That I asked for $500. I mean, because you told me to, but it wound up pissing Jeff off. Like it added to that fire of pissing Jeff Jarrett off. And I'm like, okay, whatever. I didn't know that till later on. A few more van rides, you know. And then, you know, then there was the America's Most Wanted incident.
Yeah, let's hear that one again because I think it gets better with time.
Nashville. I'd had a meeting with I was writing comedy parody songs, country comedy songs or whatever. And Dixie told me it was going to be me and Disco wrestling America's Most Wanted, and Elix Skipper was going to come in, screw the match over, and we win. So I go up there, and then after I got met with Dixie, she took me out to eat. Her and Serge, and so then I go to Bar Nashville to hang out, and I walk in and I see Chris Harris and James Storm. I'm like, hey man, what's going on? Hey, now at this point, Mike Sanders, commodity-wise, is above America's Most Wanted. Mm-hmm. It just is. But I like the guys. But I know they're Bob Ryder's voice. And I remember Chris was like, so we're wrestling you in disco tomorrow? I'm like, yeah, that's weird. I mean, we're not. I mean, you guys like World Tag, or you guys should be going for the belts. I mean, it makes no sense why you're wrestling me. And he goes, well, what's the finish? I go, I think Vince was telling me that Elix Skipper's going to come in and it's going to be a screw finish. And Chris Harris was like, you and Disco are going to win? And I said, yeah, I think so. That's why I'm talking to this guy. I remember getting to TNA and you coming up to me and go, bro, what did you do at Bar Nashville? I mean, you walked in with guns a-blazing, you kick the door down going, hey, guess who's jobbing to me in disco tomorrow? And I go, yeah, dude, Jeff is pissed. I'm like, are you kidding me? I was like, that's not what happened. He goes, I'm telling you, Jarrett's pissed. I go, oh, man. So I go to Chris Harris. I'm like, what the hell? He's like, no, we were just talking about. I'm like, no, bro, I didn't come in there guns a-blazing. But you made it. You were telling me. So I go to Jeff Jarrett and I was like, hey, Jeff, look, man, this is what happened. I said, we were just having a conversation about the match, and he asked me what the finish was. And he goes, well, you can't be telling these guys what the finish was because you're friends with Vince. And I said, I did not kick the door in at Bar Nashville. And I said, didn't. He's like, okay. I said, I apologize. I apologize from the bottom of my heart. And I remember later that night I got in the van with you, and I was like, did you talk to Jeff? And he goes, yeah, I didn't believe a word you said.
Hey, Mike, okay. how did your exit from TNA come about, man? Because I don't even remember.
This was very, very interesting, man. There was two matches. One, I got to tell you, man. One was New Jack, and they put me with New Jack, and I think they put me with New Jack, hoping I would get my ass beat, because New Jack came up to me and said, hey, I don't know you. I know you and I have a match tonight, and but there's a few people that said beat your ass. I was like, oh. He goes, but I'm not going out there because New Jack was so professional. He's like, I just want to go out there and just do what we do. He goes, because I don't know you, so I'm not going to just tee off on you not knowing the guy. And I had a lot of respect for him after that, because he probably could have, even though the finish of the match he hit me with those two Hulk gloves. Okay, these two Hulk gloves. And was the finish. But in the meantime, he also hit me with a trash can lid that opened me up. And I had to go get stitches. No big deal. Came back. And then the following week, I was told I was going to job to Shark Boy. And I kind of knew at that point I was done. Yeah. But, listen, TNA, once again, people say, Mike, what do you miss about professional wrestling? What is the one thing you miss about it? And honestly, Vince, it's the camaraderie. It's the van rides. It's the locker room. It's the guys that I jive with and I blend with, and the fun and the jokes and all that stuff. And knowing that when I go out there, I'm going to go out there and we're going to get the job done. And I never once thought in my life that my wrestling career was because I was a product of Russo or a product of the power plant. I've never blamed any of that. I blame myself a little bit, not understanding what was in front of me, and never being able to play that game because Mike Sanders is who you get, man. And it troubled me for a really long time. But I can tell you right now, where I sit in my current life, I'm glad that's not a part of my life, and hasn't been for almost 15 years now, or 12 years now, 13 years. I'm in a better place. Vince, I'm still alive.
Yeah, but Mike, it just you put a little of the blame and the responsibility on yourself for being yourself.
Oh, hang on.
But honestly, that's kind of what you're saying.
No, well, you made me think about something, man. When you said that, Vince, do you remember you, myself, and Lex Luger driving up to Rome, Georgia in your Jeep? Do you remember the conversation he said to me?
I remember the incident. I don't remember the conversation.
And this was going along with what you just said. You and him were having a conversation about guys dying in wrestling, and he was saying it's a product of the industry, or he was saying it was by choice. No, I think you were saying it was by choice, and he was saying, Vince, it's a product of the industry, and you were saying you have a choice, and he was saying it's a product of the industry, and then we started talking about. I was just a fly on the wall listening, and you got in a conversation with him about top guys putting guys over. And I remember you cracked up. He goes, because there was a young kid. He starts telling this story. This young kid who superstar laid down in the middle of the ring for Razor Ramon, laid down in the middle of the ring for X-Pac or Kid, and he made that guy. And he looked back at me and he goes, Mike, let me ask you a question. Have you ever had a top guy lay down for you in the middle of the ring? I said, no, Lex. And he said, well, if you had, you might have had a better career. Thanks, Lex. Thanks, man. Thanks for that. But okay, yeah, I mean, Vince. I mean, it's a messed up system, but it's at the same time, I do take some responsibility because, I mean, come on, I'm a grown man. I mean, I'm 28, 29, 30. But here's what I don't get is I really wish somebody like Taker or Paul Heyman or somebody would have pulled me to a side, and I'm not talking about Raven. Okay, I'm talking about guys and said, hey, let's you and I have a talk. Triple H, let's you and I have a talk. One of the best microphone guys in the business. I need you to start acting this way. But and the reason I say it is because I think a lot of guys, how many guys from WCW are still with that company that are superstars? None, Vince, none. Because I think it was just to bring us in, crush us down. Some people will ride it out for a while, and those don't fall by the wayside. I don't think there was really any high expectations. I think maybe for me there were. I mean, to bring me up there and want me to do commentary and want to try to give me a position like Heyman, they had to see something. But I just I was just who I was.
Yeah. So Mike, now you're done with this, and now you kind of go back to where you started, and you make the decision that you're gonna go after this stand-up comedy thing.
I'm gonna do stand-up comedy, man. I remember I went down to the Punchline. Now, here's another example, Vince Russo, of Mike Sanders not paying his dues. I went down the Punchline and I hit a home run. The manager came up and was like, man, how long have you been doing this? I'm like, this is my first time on stage. He's like, wow, you did really good. And I remember shortly after that, I got a phone call from the manager of the Orlando Improv. He's like, Mike Sanders, former WCW commissioner. I'd like to bring you down to open the show, pay you. I'm like, huh? Like, yeah. I was like, man, you haven't even heard my shtick. He's like, it doesn't matter. I know you were talking WCW. Come on down. And, as an opener, they're not supposed to pay you, pay your room and all that kind of good stuff. You got to pay your dues. But, I mean, dude gave me like $450, brought me down, put me in a hotel room. I'm like, okay, this is crazy. And that's just an example of, I did 2 or 3 comedy shows, and now I'm right at the dance, opening for, Tommy Davison. What's his name?
I was reading about that today, bro. Were you working with Craig Robinson?
Yeah, one of my first opening gigs was with Craig Robinson. Yeah.
Now he had to be. Was he established for that long, or was he just starting out too at that point?
He was just now starting to do, I think, movies, but he'd been on a few shows, and I remember, man. But I think he stayed high a lot, to be honest with you, because his show was supposed to be done like at 11, and he's a great piano player. He's still playing his piano, and I mean, the crowd's still there. It's midnight at the club. Craig Robinson's not done. Just a fun guy. I mean, he was a funny guy. I opened for him twice. I opened for Tommy Davison a couple of times. And then I started doing middle. I was a middle act, which is where you want to be a feature, doing 30, 35, 40 minutes. And then, I actually headlined a Thursday night. And actually, Chris Harris and I buried the hatchet down in Orlando. He came to the show, brought his girlfriend or wife or whoever he's dated at the time. And we went out and we talked and had the best time. Like wrestling never existed. 2 guys. I don't think we even talked about wrestling. And, but, I mean, I was having a good time doing comedy, Vince, but comedy is a lot like the wrestling business. You got a lot of promoters that they want to put themselves in the main event. They don't want to pay you anything. And then, you're doing a Wednesday night, Thursday night, 2-show Friday, 2-show Saturday, 1-show Sunday. I'm on the road 5 days. I'm still away from my kids. And I still got young kids, and then I was just like, there's got to be a better way. There's just, I'd rather, and then, so I kind of tapered off doing the stand-up. And I actually went and got a real job, but it was with a production company producing events. I think you remember, like I was producing corporate events, things like that. And then, I kind of honed in on doing the corporate MC thing and the corporate hosting, and wound up, I remember like the first time I got paid to do a corporate gig for one night, I was like, wow, and then flying on a Wednesday, do your show on a Thursday, and fly out on a Friday, and you're doing corporate hosting, corporate MCing, corporate team building. I mean, it was nice money. I'm like, I only got to do one day, so, and then, I couldn't I mean, the comedy, I love doing it, man. I love being on stage. But I will tell you this, professional wrestling and walking out on that stage in the world of professional wrestling and cutting a promo wasn't challenging to me. Just so you know, like I just did it. Stand-up comedy, you're either funny or you're not. Mm-hmm. And fortunately for me, I did well, because one thing I learned from professional wrestling is that it's easier for people to really believe who you really are. Like Stone Cold Steve Austin, because when he talks, you believe that's Stone Cold Steve Austin. So when I would tell stories or I would be on the comedy, that's probably why Mick Foley's so good and draws such a crowd, because Mick Foley's talking about Mick Foley and people are intrigued by his storytelling. I would just tell stories about my family and cruises that I went on and things and my kids, and I would add a little, some stuff to it, and people believed me. After the show, people would come up and they actually genuinely believed that could have happened to me. I told this joke. I can't tell you that joke. No, but it's kind of like I used to tell this joke about when first time I ever got caught drinking, and I was about 17 years old. And the truth of it is that I came home and I was drinking, and nobody ever tells you when you go. I stumbled up the stairs and I'm thinking, man, please don't let my dad wake up, and see me drunk, and he's going to whoop my butt and everything like that. And I tell the story about, and the only thing that got added to it was that, I laid down on my bed and the ceiling starts spinning. I'm getting sick, and I jump up and I run up in the hall bathroom, and I just, I start throwing up, and then on comes the light, and there's my dad sitting on the toilet. So, and people would come up to me after and go, I never saw that coming, man. That didn't really happen, but he did catch me drinking at 17,
Yeah. So now, Mike, how do you parlay that into a established acting career? It's just, bro, I'm going through your life here with you, and it's just kind of like, well, Mike Sanders is going to do whatever Mike Sanders decides he's going to do.
I'm kind of trying to live by my own rules a little bit. In 2009, a guy named Cameron Beach, which is the Mountain Man. Everybody knows him as the Mountain Man. You've actually met him. I know you have. He's good friends with Ray Lloyd and all that. He was like, you're thinking about doing some TV and film in 2009. And recommended an agent. I got an agent, went and got headshots, and I didn't know what I was doing then, man. I didn't know. And then, like,
now, were you able to get an agent because of your background in WCW? Is that what made it easy?
The recommendation on Cameron to agency, and I was with a really shady agency in the beginning. It was called Talent Network, really, really shady agency. But my agent now used to work for Talent Network. So in 2009, Vince, in 2009, she couldn't take it anymore. She's a really, really honest woman. She couldn't take lying to the talent. So she said in 2000, like, I'd only been there a few months. She said, I'm going to go start my own agency. Will you come with me? I said, absolutely. And I went with her, and in 2010, booked Army Wives right out of the gate. And didn't really know, like, I've only took one auditioning class, and it's the only one I've ever taken. It's the one I reckon. It's a buddy of mine named Rob Pralgo, who, he's got a really, really good history and a good credits. But what he taught me really, really, really helped me in my auditioning, helped me on set. And I'm gonna tell you, when I go on set now, when I'm on set or backstage, my set etiquette's a lot different, you know, because for one, you're wired with a microphone and everybody's listening to you, so I can't be above average in there cutting jokes and stuff. So I am a little, when I go on set now, I'm not holding court. But in 2009, I grabbed the agent, man. In Atlanta, there wasn't anything going on in Atlanta at the time. I was kind of doing some filming here. But I just grabbed an agent. I said, you know what? I'm going to go do this. And booked Army Wives, and I booked some short stuff here and there. And I was still kind of doing my own thing with the production company, kind of helping them out. I mean, I walked away from, $70,000 a year. I wasn't happy, man. I wasn't happy working for this guy. And I was like, man, I still got something in me. I'm like, so, and then haven't looked back since 2009 or 10. I started booking, and I showed you my credits. I mean, I'm getting, I did 5 nice shows last year. I'm not a lead or anything like that, but it's getting some residual checks and.
Oh, Mike, I mean, but Mike, you've been on Homeland, you've been on Burn Notice. I mean, let's not, just kind of gloss over. Yeah, I mean, you've been on some, epic television shows.
Yeah, and I'm very blessed. I have a lot. I'm gonna tell you, I'm a lot more humbler now than I probably have ever been, and I think, I don't know if just the age or what, or the honestly the favor that's been coming my way since, really focusing my life in the right direction and getting the right walk. And I'm going to tell you, a lot of that stuff right there, Vince, has come along because of me focusing my life in the right direction, because of my walk and it's the favor. It's favor. And yeah, I mean, it's going to be working in Burn Notice with Sharon Glasser and Homeland. There's a glimpse of me in Homeland, even though you shoot all day and it gets edited down. I'm working with Claire Danes, and but the big difference with me is I used to be very boisterous about it, but now I'm just like, I let my credits speak for themselves. I try not to Twitter it that much anymore, Facebook it. I just kind of like, this is what's happening. I'm happy to be on this show. I'll be on the new NBC show Constantine briefly, but I've got a great agent, man. I'm going to tell you, I have a great agent in Atlanta. She's a boutique agent. I've been with her. I jumped ship for 1 year. And that's when I went to LA for about 4 or 5 months. Worst mistake I ever made. And I went back to her, and she's she's got a really good walk in life herself, good spiritual walk, and she's just a good person. So.
Well, Mike, let's talk about the spiritual walk, because you and I have known each other, since '99. And it just seems that the older we got and the more we got on in life. I mean, I know you and I, our conversation started going more and more, towards Christianity, which, obviously I think is very important. How, when, and why did that kind of started taking, over your life to the point of where you are now? How did that come about?
Vince, I grew up in church, I grew up, it's pretty non-denominational. My uncle's a pastor of the church I go to. And I've always grown up with the values in place. I didn't always abide by them because, let's face it, you go into professional wrestling, you start living your life like a rock star because you think you know better. And, and I can honestly say that because I got away from my walk, so many times. That's the reason I'm divorced twice. But I'm trying to think, maybe, in probably 2007, 2006, maybe, I found a church up in Woodstock I started going to called His Hands. And I liked it because the guy, it was like tank tops, flip-flops, show up. We're not going to preach about it. We're just going to talk. And my defense went down. Like, okay. Because I'm going to tell you, the church I go to now is my uncle's church, and it's very hellfire and brimstone. And you really got to prepare yourself to go in there because it's old school 30 years ago church. And him and I talked. I actually spoke before the new year. He asked me to talk about, he actually wanted me to talk about my wrestling career and everything. And believe it or not, I didn't talk anything about wrestling. And I'll get into what I talked about. I don't know if I told you this, but the church is, 50 years old. It hasn't changed much. And I spoke, about 30 minutes on updating your God, because we update everything in our life. We update our cars, we update our house, we update our shoes, our clothing, but very rarely do we update our God. And what I tried to present to his church was that a year ago, I checked in on Facebook at the church. That's all I did was I checked in. I, in my mind, updated my God. A friend of mine saw that. Him and his wife have been looking for a place to go, saw that on Facebook. Technology, updating your God. They've been faithful members of the church for the last year and a half, giving their tithes and offerings, and they love it. And but nobody in that, but people in that church are so old school and 30 years old, 30 years and 40 years been there. That was the message that I just felt like I needed to tell people, like, take time out to update your God. You got to, because we're not living 30, 40, 50 years ago. You can't have 2-hour sermons with the youth of America that we have today. You can't hold attention span in church for 2 hours. People won't come back. You got to figure out how to give it to the youth. If you want them back in your church, deliver it to them. Give them a little something to come back to. And that's what I've been trying to help my uncle with at his church, because he's still old school. I mean, he'll start at 10:45. He won't be done to 1. I'm like,
yeah, I'm the same way, Mike. I'm so much of, you know what, you've got to bring Christianity into the real world. And Mike, the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life, and I've said this a million times, the hardest thing I ever did in my life was become a Christian, because it takes work every day to walk the walk. You've got to work on it. And you know what, Mike? Every single day we fall flat on our faces. We know we did. We sinned. We made a mistake. You got to get yourself back up the next day, brush yourself off, and start all over again. And I've always said it, man. It's been the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life. But that's the reality of the world. I mean, Mike, you know, going back to wrestling, I kick myself so much because, you know, I became a Christian about 10 years ago. I was still in the wrestling world. And Mike, every day I tried to bring that Christianity over into wrestling to make this a better place. You know, today, maybe if it's the one individual I talk to, whatever my part is, but what I would always find is by the end of the day, the world won. And by the end of the day, you know, I was again kicking myself because rather than me transform them over, you know, I was back, you know, dealing with them on their turf. But, you know, like I said, it's a commitment, it's a responsibility, and, you know, you've got to be real about it, man.
Well, I'll tell you this, Vince. I'm a firm believer in the fact that since I changed my walk, and listen, we all fall back, but when my walk's on, man, I get a lot of good favor coming my way. You know, it's kind of, the craziest thing is that my agent and I used to have a joke. When I was going to his hands church up in Woodstock, I literally, like, I'd walk out, I'd put $50, and this guy doesn't take up an offering. He's like, there's drop boxes in the back. You want to leave something, leave it. You know, he doesn't preach that 10%. So you've got to bring people's defenses down if you want to keep them in church. I'm sorry. That's just the way the world is. You start preaching about all this money and everything, it's, oh, here we go. That's what I'm trying to get across to my uncle, because where my uncle's church sits should be the most thriving church in Smyrna, Georgia. But you've got to get people's defenses down. You can't hound them for money. You got to just give them the information, want them to come back. It's like, honestly, it's a lot like an angle. You got to want to keep coming back on Monday night to watch Raw. You got, whoa, let me get back. Same things with church. It's with anything in life. You want people to come to your church? Give them enough. And they go, you know what? I'm going to be back next Sunday because I don't want to miss what's going on. But I'm going to tell you this. I'm not joking when I tell you this. I dropped $50 in the offering plate on my way out. And on Monday or Tuesday, I'd get a call and say, hey, you just booked Army Wives. I dropped 50, hey, you just booked Burn Notice. And that's the way my life has operated on every single one of those credits. I'm not just preaching the spiritual or anything like that, but I'm telling you, and I believe that it's not so much, for me, it's not so much about church, but for me, it's about knowing that I'm doing something that I feel good about. When I go to church, I'm not, and there's two things, and I just had this conversation with my uncle. There's two things I don't do, and it's probably the worst thing. One, I don't ask people to go to the gym with me, because I think if you want to go to the gym and work out, go. If you don't, fine. If you ask me, hey, can I go to the gym with you? Yeah. And I don't ask people to go to church.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that's probably bad because I know you're probably supposed to, but I'm like, you want to go to church? Go, hey man, can I go to church with you? Yeah, come on. I don't want to feel like I'm telling somebody this is my walk. This is like if I was out in Colorado with you and I know you're going to church, chances are, hey, Vince is going, I'm going with you.
Mike, I got to tell you, man, you are so on par with me because, Mike, we've been in Colorado for 7 years, and I'm still in search of the right church. And Mike, here's what happens that drives me crazy. And even as a Christian, I absolutely hate it. When they see a new member walk in, bro, they hit you from all sides. You know, everybody introducing themselves. And I mean, you're just overwhelmed. And Mike, I'm like you. I believe that everybody's walk is different for that person. My walk is very personal, and it's all in here because it's like I've got to concentrate so hard on it to abide by it. And, you know, I'm all about, bro, I want people to look at me and see God through me. You know, that's what I'm all about. That's why, like, when I do something I shouldn't do, I feel I'm disappointing him. But it's like you said about the church, bro. You know, any new member walks in that first week, over all of a sudden you're bombarded. And if this is something that's very personal to you, you're not going to go back to that church.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. And that's what I mean. I know that I'm supposed to be going to my uncle's church, but it's tough. It's a struggle for me because I know that chances are I'm going to be there past 12 o'clock. But you know, I believe listen, man, your walk is your walk. And I got to commend you because I can imagine what your struggle is like. I couldn't imagine my struggle right now being in the world of professional wrestling, trying to maintain a sane mind and a moral compass. So I can only imagine, but you know, it's and I hate to say it, but sometimes, you know, what we do for a paycheck, sometimes not what we want to do, but sometimes it's what we have to do. You're a family man. I had 2 kids, you know, so my priority once I got out of wrestling was, you know, these kids, you know, I got to make sure they're okay.
Yeah.
And you're like that, you know, so yeah.
Well, Mike, listen, man, it's been a breath of fresh air with you because, you know, from the first day that I met you, man, you've always been honest. You've always spoken your mind. You've never changed your stripes. And it's what I've always, you know, respected the most about you. And it's what makes you you, and it's what makes you unique. You know, Mike, if you want to share out there, you know, I know you have your website. You spoke about it briefly, and I know you're in and out of Twitter. If people want to stay, you know, in contact with you and follow your career, just tell them where they can go.
Mike Sanders NBT, which is, you know, Natural Born Thriller, or, you know, you can check out MikeSanders.net, which is my website, or just find me on Facebook. I don't have my agent's been on me about getting a fan page on Facebook, but I'm just kind of like, I mean, really, do I need a fan page? I'm like, so, I mean, if I could get my Twitter followers up to 12.8 like Vince Russo, I'd be happy. I mean, but that's another thing. Like, you know, that's another example of. I mean, I got like 762 followers, and a lot of those came from Shane Helms, believe it or not, and you and different people. But like, I haven't pushed the Twitter thing. I probably should, because, you know, social media is a part of my life. But sometimes, I'm telling you, sometimes I just get so turned off by it when I turn it on. I struggle with it. But no, I mean, Twitter, you know, Mike Sanders NBT, Natural Born Thriller. You know, and keep up with me there. You know, in October I'll be on the NBC show Constantine, but you probably won't see a whole lot of me because of the way it was shot. And you know, Station events. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you having me on your show, man. I mean,
hey, I'm gonna be appreciating you when you get that leading role in the movie. Who there you go. You get that leading role. I mean, you know, Mike, you already, you know, you didn't put yourself over, but you know, you already shot a movie. Devil's Knot was a movie, correct?
Right. Reese Witherspoon and Colin Firth. It's a true story about the West Memphis 3, the murders in West Memphis.
That's right. And from what I hear, rumor on TMZ and whatnot, Reese Witherspoon was very into you. So I don't know who's going to be the leading lady for Mike Sanders, you know, for that first movie. We're just going to have to wait and see. Maybe a Kate Upton. Who would be your choice, Mike? You get the first lead in that movie, which you know is coming. Who's that first choice?
I'm going to tell you, man. I mean, I could go young. I would, but who I've always been a fan of, man, is Mary Steenburgen.
Oh yeah.
Just always been a fan of hers, man. Like her. But if I got to go younger, there's a couple of. If I got to go younger, yeah, Kate Upton or Kate Moss. Not who's the girl? Who's the girl? Goldie Hawn's daughter.
Hudson.
Kate Hudson, right? Or I'm gonna go with somebody just for the publicity, like a Kim Kardashian selfie girl.
Right.
I don't know, man. Whoever, if it happens, I'm on this journey now. Also, I don't, this, Vince. I have two companies. Also, I don't know if you know this or not, but I have a company called Roll Speed Media, which is talent solutions for actors in Atlanta. I shoot a lot of headshots, put people on tape, and I also have what's called the Party Paramedic, which is my DJ hosting MC. I created Don't Let Your Event Go into Cardiac Arrest. Call the 911 a fun. So I got the Party Paramedic and Roll Speed Media. So I got a lot going on, but I will tell you this. I've struggled a little bit here and there, but this year has been one of the best years of my life, coming full circle. I'll tell you that right now.
Well, that's great to hear, Mike. And I know, man, as long as you stay true to yourself and true to your walk, all good things are going to come your way. And, Mike, I'm just so happy you enlightened, the VIP members of this website, with your honesty, which is really hard to come across in our business. And, again, Mike, from me to you, I'm just thrilled to be a friend. I love the background, bro. I mean, now we've raised the bar here on the show, bro. Wait till Disco sees what you brought to the dance.
He's gonna be mad, man. He's gonna be mad. All right,
Mike.
man.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mike. I really appreciate it.
Cool, brother. Take care of yourself.
All right, man. Take care.